So the video you're about to watch is all about how to know if your game idea is actually going to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question.
And here's why this matters. In 2014, Steam had a bit over 1,700 game releases. In 2024, over 18,000. That's an 11 times increase in just 10 years. And here's the thing. The top 100 games capture 90% of the revenue, leaving thousands of other games to split what's left. So with odds like that, how do you avoid spending years on a game that never finds its audience?
In video games, we have kind of figured out technology aspects and the engines and so on. We have figured out distribution, marketing. It's now time to really get good at validating and ideating things. And then I think that's the best way to lower risk.
So I sat down with Riad, who has over 20 years experience building games, to learn the best ways to validate game ideas before you bet years on your life on them. Let's go. A lot of studios and a lot of game devs are producing games that they hope players would love, but it's a bet. And that bet seems like it's super hard to predict. It's very hard to predict what's going to be fun, what's going to be interesting. Why is it so that it's so difficult to figure out what could be fun? And what's a way to figure out how to increase the chance of success?
Right. I would say maybe even the word predicting is kind of a fallacy or like a dead end. I think when you look at other industries, like the film industry, for example, right? These are like billion-dollar studios that still haven't figured out how to make like one successful movie after another. With video games, like so fast-moving, like so influenced by pop culture and by new technology and so on, it's just impossible to predict. Basically, is my current understanding. So I think better than predicting is to think about predicting is to think about validating, right? Not assuming anything or being like really humble about your assumptions, but testing your assumptions as quickly as possible. And I mean, thankfully, in video games, we have kind of figured out technology aspects and the engines and so on. We have figured out distribution, marketing. It's now time to really get good at validating and ideating things. And then I think that's the best way to lower risk for your game development.
So how do you get started? What do you look for when you think about validating your idea?
There are different aspects to game success, in my opinion. One is the marketability, and that's just really like the concept of your game, kind of the genre, the target group that you have, the look, the theme that you're tapping into, right? I think this is like you can validate super early because it's like, right? It's like I'm doing a city building game with zombies on this platform and so on, right? And then the other thing is the quality of the game. That's kind of harder to validate because that only shows up once you've done like a prototype, when you get it into people's hands and so on. So that's more like a late stage validation. But I think you need to validate both, obviously, because only if you have both aspects, the marketability and the quality of the game, you can build this virtuous cycle where people will give your game a chance. They will check it out. They will play it based on the outside appeal. And then they will recommend it further if the quality is also right. And then only then you have like this chain of recommendations where like people check it out because it's interesting. It's in the right genre. It's in a fantasy that they understand. And then they recommend it further. And then the next person checks it out again because it's, again, this marketability, like the outside appeal. So you have to test both aspects, I think. And there are different mechanics for each stage.
Can you walk me through a bit like how the validation process differs in each stage of production?
So in general, there's like, I would say there's the concepting phase or ideation phase when you're just even like trying to figure out what you're doing. Then there's the pre-production phase where you're prototyping stuff and like checking if your game is fun. And you're figuring out kind of how many levels do I need, how many enemies, how much time does it take me to create one puzzle and so on. And then the production phase is where you just like power through it and do the stuff. And then later on after release, there is the post-production. So and what I said before with the marketability and the quality, you know, the quality is hard to figure out during concepting phase. There's no quality yet, right? So that's for later stages. And And the concepting phase, that's something, or the marketability is something that you can figure out very early, like during concepting phase even. So to go into more specifics, so there are different channels that you can try. Obvious one is like social media, right? Even at the level where you have a concept, you can fake screenshots, you can fake a trailer or something. There's no game asset yet, right? There's no game project yet, but you can fake having one. Or you can also say that you don't have one. You can do like mock-up screenshots and just get a feeling of like what people think and so on. So that's like the very first trivial thing to do. And from there you can go on. There's, as you progress in the circle or on the timeline, there's like things like Kickstarter, doing a demo, putting up a Steam page, participating in a game jam that's more early stage, and so on.
You mentioned Steam. Let's talk about Steam specifically. There's so many games that are being published there. So what are some ways that could help game developers, game studios to stand out there, to kind of build up their presence and their visibility better?
Yeah, I think that's a $1 million question. I remember when I put out my first indie game in 2014, there were around, I think around 3,000-4,000 games in total on Steam. Now it's over 150,000, right? So that creates a huge backlog of games, and a lot of games that are fighting for visibility. Also, since old games also occupy the front page due to all these discounts and so on. So it has changed a lot. One example is that when I did my earlier games, you would get 1 million views gifted by Steam just for releasing, right? Guaranteed. That has changed. There was also a couple of years ago like a noticeable bump or change in the algorithms where all the like mediocre success indies just lost 20 to 30% revenue overnight. That was like a breaking point where really Steam focused on successful games and recommending those games to even more people. So at this point, there are a couple of places where you still get organic visibility, but there's not many left. So you have like the popular upcoming category. If you cross the certain threshold of wishlists and so on, and your release date is close, you can land there. If you have like a somewhat of success, you go into the new and popular category. There's also the Next Fest, which is huge for sharing your demo. But generally, you want to try to get as many people on your Steam page by yourself, right? It's really hard to rely on just organic success on Steam. So if you don't do the proper marketing and don't bring in like PR and so on by yourself, it's hard to survive just based on only relying on the Steam algorithms.
And how can you use Steam to validate as well, like since we're talking about validation?
Yeah, I mean, something that Steam recommends generally is putting up a Steam page, a store page as early as possible. You need a certain minimum amount of assets. You need like a screenshot and so on. But generally, you know, like even a year, 2 years before release, you should already put up the Steam page. This allows you to collect wish lists and that then can confirm or validate your idea as well. I mean, there are some publishers that go as far as being known for putting up dozens and dozens of Steam pages for weird game concepts and then kind of testing where the most interest is. I think formally that's not allowed by Steam. That's not something they like to see, which is understandable. Even as customer, I'm disappointed if a game never comes out. But you know, without copying that directly, I think it's a good validation method just to understand like how you're doing, because people, when they go to your Steam page, they don't do deep research, right? They just literally look like for 5 seconds and they might be off the page again. So your game title, your one-liner description, your first screenshot really have to hit and really be understandable. And that's a good validation technique and even like a good marketing learning. You should really polish that until it's really strong. And then you have, of course, later down the line, you have the demo, which is, I think, super important. Like the new meta on Steam is really like doing the demo stuff, and that has the benefit of your demo can go viral by itself, right? It can collect reviews and so on, and those are really strong signals. Those are the best signals, I think, because nothing trumps really like playtime to evaluate the quality of your game.
What can you do to use or leverage social media to validate your ideas?
With social media, it's always a bit hard to use the information, because it's hard to say how much of that will convert into actual like wish lists and buys. You know, there might be people that are interested in some joke or some that you're doing, but that might still not buy your actual game. And also there's a big depending on which platform this channel is popular, like TikTok, for example, mostly used on mobile. So you really have a problem then. People are usually not logged in their mobile Steam. So, and there's like problems with linking and so on TikTok. So that can create quite a friction to get people to wishlist your game. But it's still like, even disregarding that, the amount of views, the comments and so on, and just the perception of what people think about your game, like, oh, this reminds me of this, or this reminds me of that, right? That can be really powerful. And I think it's also good training for how to speak about your game. Like, I often think when people think about, well, how can I market my game in a way that's really exciting? I think often the answer should be just ask your fans, like just listen to what they are saying, how they are mirroring back, like, oh, this is like Stranger Things in space or something, right? You should ask them kind of what they feel. And then that's also like a good purpose for social media. Yeah, but it can also be misleading. Maybe you get a viral video or something and it goes nowhere afterwards. So it's always, I think social media is kind of, you should not disregard it, but it's not super reliable for validation.
It's getting also trickier because a lot of platforms are now switching to kind of the TikTok model where videos are popping up on the For You page, but then individual profiles are starting to become less important. So you could have individual videos having like peak viewership, but then the following of the account being super low and it doesn't convert. And also like the platform wants to get you to stick on the platform itself. So it penalizes if you get people out of the platform, which makes it defies the purpose as well. Also, like, what do you do if you're like a smaller studio with like, I mean, when you validate ideas, you also don't want to spend just like creating specialized content for specific social media platform, no? Like if you do YouTube videos, right? Or if you do TikTok videos, then you do YouTube videos, then do Reddit. And it's so much work put in just like different social media channels. Yeah. Whereas you want to focus on actually starting to build your game. So how are you not going to get lost into making content to attract people and to get that answer? And then focus on your game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would say you shouldn't create dedicated footage for every platform. I think it's like you said, it's too much work, and maybe you should just make the distinction whether you want to focus on video format or text format and so on. Probably video is better because you can use it you can repurpose it on different platforms. So yeah, but my feeling, to be honest, is not that the problem is that indie developers or game studios are wasting too much time on like creating marketing material. It's usually the opposite problem, is that they don't put in enough effort on that, and that they feel, well, I've done a post like 3 months ago. I talked about it once, like, why am I gonna repeat the same thing, right? Or I don't have anything new to show and so on. And I think that's that's underestimating how few people see your content usually, right? If you have followers and you post something, maybe like 5% or so see it at most, right? So you could post like 20 times in a row until kind of statistically everybody has seen it. So I think people should rather err on the side of putting out a lot of things, a lot of content, and it doesn't have to be high quality. Like, I think there's also a mistake of being too obsessed about like having the right, I don't know, branding and so on. Just people are interested in your content. If you're making a cool game, you don't need to have the perfect call to action or something, right? I've seen like so many successful tweets that are breaking kind of all the rules about like how the image should look like and so on. Just make it yourself, like just be yourself ideally, and then that often resonates more with people than this perfect high time investment quality thing.
One way to validate the ideas or to test ideas is also to talk to people you know. It tends to be a bit easier than working on marketing material or anything else. How would you approach it so that you get also maybe feedback that's not entirely biased? Because I mean, friends that love you will always tell you how awesome you are.
Yeah.
So how can you use friends and family as a testing mechanism to get actually honest feedback?
Yeah, I mean, basically by not listening to what they're saying. I mean, there's people that like you or like your family and so on, they will probably, I mean, depends on the family you have, but they will usually say, oh, it's cool, yeah, good job and so on. So you really have to kind of disregard that. Like there could still be good feedback and so on, but I would disregard kind of the quality rating or something that they give. I think, in doubt, rely on data, and the best data you can have is just playtime and seeing how much people like how long they are playing your game. So if I have a friend and I send them a build and they say, oh my God, it's the best game ever, but then I have data that says like they played like 2 minutes, it's kind of not super truthful. And the other way around as well. Like maybe somebody's like, yeah, it was okay. But then you see in the data that they played like 20 hours. And so it's like, well, there must be something here that really makes them come back, Another
way could be game jams. Can you talk a bit about like that approach?
Yeah, I think game jams are really cool. There are a lot of aspects to it. I mean, on one hand, for game jams, it's like a way to collaborate quickly, to learn something new, to meet new people and so on. So there's like a lot of cool aspects that I enjoy about it. But I think something where they're also really interesting is for validation purposes. And some game jams, like the Ludum Dare, for example, they get really high visibility because they have this rating system where the game creators, they rate each other afterwards. So that gives you kind of a guaranteed amount of eyeballs that are looking at your game. And there's also excitement because it's like a fixed date and like everybody's working on it on this weekend, right? So kind of if you can, there's like there are a lot of games that are being created. It feels like if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Because if you manage to reach like top 3 in the Ludum Dare with thousands of games competing, really just based on a prototype that's 2 days production time, you must have really a good concept or a good core loop. And so I think that's really great for validation. And then, so within the game jam, it's probably like a good place where you can test the quality, like the quality of your game idea, and like how addictive it is. But then in the rating afterwards, and then if you upload it to itch and so on, in the days after, you can also really measure the marketability in this whole virtuous cycle. So if you from a game jam game get like 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 downloads, then you know you're onto something.
What about Kickstarter?
Yeah, the Kickstarter meta has changed a lot over the years. Initially, Kickstarter it was all about this idea of validation, right? It was really, here is a project idea. If there's enough interest and you prove it with kind of data, with money. So it's not just, oh, I think I might be interested, but if you're really willing to commit money to it, then we will actually do it. Over the years, it has changed a bit. First, the quality barrier to setting up the whole campaign increased a lot, right? We have like really great campaigns on there that just raised the level, the bar so much that just preparing a Kickstarter campaign is months and months of work, right? At that point, you want to validate as quickly as possible. So if I have to put in like 3 months of Kickstarter campaign preparation, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. And then on the other hand, the other development that you can see now is that people are not using it as a kill gate anymore, where it's, well, we need 1 million, and if we get less, we're just not going to do it. They're kind of playing the system by really aiming for really, really low goals that are like pretty much 100% confidence that they can be overcome. And then they do like stretch goals and build on top of those. It's still a certain type of validation, I think, because even validation doesn't always mean doing a game yes or no. It doesn't have to be binary. It can also be gradual, right? It can also be, well, we're doing this game, but to which degree, right? Do we have like a lot of budget? Do we have small budget? Do we scope up or scope down? So I think it's still a form of validation. I know a couple of game studios are still using Kickstarter really well for testing ideas, like Straythorn. They really believe strongly in Kickstarter, and so I think there's still a place for Kickstarter. It's not as easy or as straightforward as it was a couple of years ago to understand how to validate the best over there.
Another route is maybe going through like publisher pitching as a validation method in a way. What's your opinion there?
The thing about publishers is that they have a very experienced scouts. So those scouts, if you're lucky, and if it's kind of like a cool publisher, that can give you feedback, and then you can use that as data point within your validation. I think it's hard. The usual reaction of publisher is, of course, to deny you, right? They get hundreds and hundreds of pitches. They have to deny 99%. So it's not as obvious as a validation mechanism, at least on an individual basis, right? If 300 publishers deny your game or like are uninterested in, then you are probably there might be a problem with the marketability and like the concept of the game. What I like to do, and I've pitched a lot to publishers and so on, and especially when I'm at a conference and I'm pitching like 10 times in a row, what I personally like to do is mix up kind of the tagline or like the way how I describe the concept of the game. So the first meeting I will go in like it's a sci-fi RTS, and then the next one I will try to like always come up like it's imagine if you could go in space and then you reach Mars, but the planet is not there or something, right? And then over the day, the advantage is that you do a lot in a row. Over time, you can really kind of improve your claim and your tagline for the game over more and more. So it's not a clear validation, but it's still like a data point that you can use. And but there are a lot of games famously who got denied by 50 publishers and that ended up being super hits in the end.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say as well. Like, isn't there also bias there?
Oh yeah, there's strong bias. I mean, there's strong bias. The publishers, the scouts, I just said they're very experienced, but there can be a drawback, right? Because they are like upcoming genres. They are like genres that are kind of weird, that are strange, that are people have not had a good grasp on. Maybe there's like a kind of grassroots movement on Steam that's embracing that genre, but you have to pitch at a publisher. You have to hope that the scout understands this, and they might not even be into that sub genre or culture as you are, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't say take that validation too serious, but unfortunately, of course, like just the economic reality is that some of us really rely on this. So it's difficult, it's tricky to how to solve that.
All right, so you have like definitely a lot of different ways on how you can try to get validation for a game, but how do you know when a idea is validated?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, right? And I think I always have to think of this feedback I got from one game developer that I asked about the specific question. And I asked, like, how do you know which ones out of like 3 games that you're testing, like which is the one? And what they said was, well, you're not looking for, oh, this game made 123 downloads and this one made 200, and that's one is more than the other one, you're really looking for outliers. Like if you have a trend, or like if you have virality, you will know. Like there's no question about it. So I think the easy answer would be, if you are wondering about this question, you might just not have found it yet, right? If you have like a game you put out and like thousands of likes are coming in, and you get like, you put out a demo and it's like 100,000 downloads and so on, then you will know, okay, this is viral. So as long as you don't have that, it might be that you're kind of testing between like ideas which are not quite fitting yet.
Could it also be that your marketing sucks?
Yes, but there are different opinions on it. My personal opinion is, I'm going back and forth, and it's kind of like a pendulum. So when I started doing indie games, I thought, oh, it's all about the game sales by itself. Then over the years, I was convinced, no, it's like the marketing is the most important thing, or like the marketability. Now it's kind of swinging back, and it's both. It's like you have to have the right concept, the right quality, ideally, and then every marketing that you do will be like multiplied by the potential of your game.
So you mentioned that one way to know if your idea is validated is to look through the signals. Can you walk me a bit through other methodologies?
You should, first of all, treat everything as a data point, like every feedback you get and so on, right? That's important. But to really come to this decision, I think there are like a couple of key aspects. One is like what we just talked about, the level of magnitude you're looking at. You're not looking for like, oh, this game performs 3% better or something, right? That's not relevant enough. You're looking for something that performs 100, 1,000% better, right? Then you will really know, okay, I have it's called product market fit in the startup world, right? When you're just having the right product for the right market at this time. And that's what you're aiming for. And you will know when you hit it. Another angle that's interesting is, well, let's say you are maybe beyond concepting, or you see this video and you think, oh, I should really start validating my stuff, but I'm already like in production or something. What do you do at that point? If you only have one game idea and you're constantly reiterating, revisiting it, kind of trying to make it work, but it's not quite working, or you are unsure how to interpret the results and so on, or the feedback, I think an interesting angle to look at it is always to have in mind that it's best to test something by comparing it to something else. If you don't have anything else to compare it to, it will make it difficult for you. So one thing I would suggest if I see a new aspiring indie developer and they're working on their first game and so on, I would recommend, don't put all your eggs in one basket right away on this one game idea that you have. Try different ideas. Keep your options open. Test different ideas, how well the concept works and so on. And then decide. And that will also help you with validation, because if you see like the reaction to one game, you can literally measure it compared to the other game and say like, oh, this one got like 5 times this one got 500 likes, the other one got 100 and so on, right? It will give you a reference point. You want to look for real data. And the real data is really playtime. Even a wish list, like what is a wish list, right? It's like a commit of like, the only commitment you have is like, oh, sure, send me an email maybe on the day of when you release a demo or the game comes out, right? It's so little commitment. So the biggest commitment that people can do beyond money is really lifetime, right? So if people are willing to, or they cannot stop playing your game for 100 hours or something, that's the best validation you can have. It's even better validation than spending money or something. Because then you have a concept that a quality, a game loop that really works.
We touched a bit upon this topic, but I'm wondering, is there anything else that you see that studios tend to make as a mistake when they're trying to validate their ideas that others can kind of watch out for?
I think one mistake is very human, and that's kind of like confirmation bias. You really want the game to work out and you really want it to succeed. So you will always tend to look for confirmations and like for positive feedback and maybe disregard negative feedback. Yeah, by having like different data points that you can compare to, like different options, that will make it easier for you to walk away in worst case. Because otherwise, it's very easy to get stuck in the sunken cost fallacy where you're trying to fix something and which might not be salvageable. I think one mistake is completely disregarding validation with the idea of, oh, that's too capitalistic, or like too like I want to do art and so on, and I want to do indie games, and I feel about this idea, and I think that's great, right? That's something that resonates very strongly with me. But also, what resonates or what I find in myself is, I have a lot of game ideas in me. I have drawers full of game ideas. I I have a drawer with like a folder on my computer with like 30 game ideas. If there would be a way for me to learn which one of these is like a mega hit and which one of these is completely tanking, if you could tell me that in advance, would that change the choice of the game I would be working on? Of course. Like I want to do all of these 30 games. If you would tell me this one is the potential, or it is the mega hit, of course I would work on this one rather than another one. So it's really something I don't understand when people disregard validation. It's helping you, saving your own time and like unlocking your potential, right? I don't think it destroys art or something. It doesn't. For me, validation doesn't. It still means I'm validating between my 30 game ideas. It doesn't mean that I will chase anything that's out there and do like a free-to-play casino game or something, right? That's not what I mean when I talk about validation.
Great, we're gonna piss off the casino people.
That's fine. Screw them. Yeah. Although Balatro's fine. That's not gambling, okay?
Fair enough. What do you think about the approach of kind of building in stealth and being super secretive? One is I've heard people are kind of scared of their idea being stolen. On another, there's like people who want to have like a big reveal. What do you think about that?
There are different strategies. Sometimes you, depending on your announcement strategy, right? If you participate in a showcase with an exclusive trailer and so on, sometimes you have to hold back that stuff, right? Because it's tied to exclusivity. These showcases won't let you participate unless you do like a brand new trailer for them and so on. So there are like business realities and things that can influence your timing. On a general level, I would say, announce as early as possible, put up the Steam page as early as possible, collect data as early as you can. I think that's probably the advice I would give to any indie developer. If you have done like super mega successes and everybody is kind of waiting to what are they going to do next and so on, right? Maybe you have then more flexibility whether you announce early or later. But the reality is probably for most people, nobody is waiting for your game. Kind of like nobody is like holding their breath or like when are they going to release the game. Probably 99% of people don't even know you exist or your game exists, right? So I think for those people, it's better to just announce early and get data as soon as possible.
If somebody watching this could only implement like one validation practice, what would you recommend they start with?
One is very little. I would, if you can only do one, I think do the game jam, because that contains a lot of different aspects that you hit really quickly. And even if you walk away from the game idea and you're like, oh, I'm not going with it, you will just have wasted or invested 2 days, 3 days of work, right? I think so. When you go backwards, so we figured out distribution, marketing, production. Now we're at the first step, which is like the ideation and the concepting step. And I feel that's kind of maybe the biggest growth area. Don't want to be too startup-y speaking, but I think that's where for myself, I think that that's the area I spend the least amount of thinking about when I look at my past games. Usually those were like, let's work on this game. Okay, yeah, sounds cool. And then we spent like 2 years production, 1 year marketing, 1 year, like figuring out business deals and distribution. And I think that's in this time where all these other things have been figured out and the level of competition and so on, it's really interesting to go into this ideation and figure out, okay, how do we master this area as well? And I hope this video maybe gives some inspiration for how to think about validation.
Please like, subscribe, and share.